It should not be this hard, ladies and gentlemen, to collect some cardboard. We are here. This show exists because here at the end of 2025, it is still nearly impossible to casually collect Pokemon cards without going to extreme lengths or paying way too damn much. And it's gotten to the point of complete burnout. And I know I'm not alone when I say that. I've been only collecting for a short period, even only since like 2022, right when the pandemic hype was kind of falling off. I was kind of around that hype period, I would say, is the first stage of millennials falling back in love with the Pokemon TCG. And even through kind of that second evolutionary stage, the Charmeleon of 151 hitting the market, product was still readily available. 151 was a little bit tougher. But even then, if it wasn't available necessarily in your store, you could probably find it online for close to MSRP, which was perfectly fine for most folks. Then came the release of Pokemon Pocket. And all you new people, I say, as someone who has like a year experience on you or whatever, and the Surging Spark set. And everyone knows the story since then. Product is impossible to find. People are waiting in lines for far too long in cold weather or just making endless trips back to Walmart and Target to check empty shelves over and over again. So it's, in short, grown a little sad and a little stale, the Pokemon collecting or TCG collecting part of it. And honestly, even with the prospect of more product coming up down the pipeline, and just knowing how much of it is going to come through like Sam's Club, Costco, go through the normal channels of like Walmart, Target, GameStop, who can just charge whatever they want, apparently. Um, just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And I know I'm not the only one. Now, I'm not, as my clickbaity title and thumbnail are probably suggesting to you, I'm not going to try to convince you to throw Pokemon into the trash bin. I'm not doing any such thing. Only that if you have come to collecting TCGs just recently, it would behoove you, I believe, to ask what has brought you here, what is fun about TCGs, and maybe see if during these really intense hype cycles when you really could just use a bit of patience and get that Pokemon product later on, is there some other TCG that might fill the void? Something else that you could use to supplement that love of collecting and casually playing. So that is the purpose of this channel here, dear viewer, because as surprising as it was to me when I looked into all the options, it was Disney and Ravensburger's Lorcana that kind of scratched the itch. That was like the most fun sandbox to kind of play around in. So I'm here to lay out the reasons why Lorcana should be the next TCG that you casually collect and casually play with friends and family. So let's hop into it. This is Ink Blot Cardboard, my friends, where we always remind you TCGs are whatever you make of them. So, a bit of background. I'm waving this around because I gesture a lot with things in my hand, but also because I'm going to be opening up some cards here as I talk a little bit, and I want to be able to put this down. But usually I like to motion with it. So I'm coming to this first and foremost as a collector, right? Here, second, a little bit. But the first question I really need to answer when I'm finding a new TCG is this going to be fun to open up packs of? And is it going to be fun to collect in different like subsets? So as like a quick background, my childhood TCG history included collecting Pokemon, as I had mentioned before, but also playing casually the Harry Potter TCG. And the most appealing part of TCGs for me was always how cards could communicate both like a bit of character of either like the item or the action or the character itself, but also communicate like the overall theme of what that set would be. So it could be, the owner's Pokemon was always something that stuck with me, or like the Quidditch set having a bunch of Quidditch items or Quidditch players that I was familiar with. It just seemed like a really fun way to kind of fuse the property that I liked with whatever game mechanics that these people who had designed the game had come up with themselves. So it just felt like, man, that is what I realized I liked about TCGs is being able to collect things and feel through the sets the evolution of the game. So that's what my game needed to have, right? I needed something that was fun both to open and to have subsets to own. What better way to illustrate? So this is I'm new at this, so you're gonna have to get used to me going, oh, how does it look up there? This is the Elsa gift set that was released with a lot of Fabled product, even though it doesn't contain Fabled packs. I got it $20 at Best Buy for their Black Friday deal. You can currently get it at Target for 25, I believe. So be on the lookout. And I used to have to imagine I've got like a cool rig where you can see both when I'm opening and me, and I'll just flash the cool cards when they come up. The first game I asked myself was Magic. It was kind of like the big dog on scene because I had opened up a couple of packs of um, the Lord of the Rings set when that had come out. And this is nice. Also promo, hard to see in the camera, but it's got that real nice purple border on the promo there. I like that. And love Lord of the Rings, but as I was opening it, like just in general, sword and sorcery usually isn't my thing. The more serious the art style, the more inclined I am to think, it's just not really my thing. But I did like Lord of the Rings as a property, so I kind of tried it out. There were a couple cards that I wanted to collect, but I knew through that opening experience that opening Magic cards on the reg was not going to be really fun or fulfilling for me. That also meant pretty immediately Flesh and Blood Sorcery, those are going to be out. Even if they're really fun, I'm not necessarily going to be playing nearly as much as I'm going to be looking at listings, thinking about binder pages in my head, and collecting cards as I go. So those kind of went out. One Piece also was going to be a hard sell. The manga and the art style, this is Raina Jafar's our first back. The manga and the art style for One Piece just were never really my thing. So it was just again something that's going to be a fun opening experience. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Same thing with the art style. And was probably going to be even more like intimidating to get into if I wanted to like at all casually play. I Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such a weird one. From what I can understand, everyone who really likes Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't get any of the modern cards. I don't know. But that one was out too. Um, Star Wars Unlimited. I really, really wanted to like the art on those cards and like the design of like the card frame and like everything about the I don't know, I guess you would call it like interface or whatever you would call that. It's just so ugly. And then combine that with literally any decision that Fantasy Flight was making just seemed like they weren't taking it seriously at all. So why the hell would I? But the game that had left a lasting impression was Disney and Ravensburger's Lorcana here. There was something I was around when it had first launched, and there was all this like speculative bubble around it. But I was lucky enough; I got my hands on a couple starter decks. I think one from the first set and one from the second. Because again, it was being scalped to high heaven, so it was impossible to even get to play. Um, Played a couple of hands, and I was not only impressed. I had played some Pokemon as well casually at that point, and it was way more fun than Pokemon for sure. But it also there was something about seeing some of these card arts that was much more enjoyable than I was even expecting them to be. Like compared to, say, Magic. So seeing like a sorcerer Rafiki or a sorcerer Mickey was like the foil that was in one of those starter decks. There was something in a really like fun, goofy way, more badass about it than seeing like a Gandalf, who we think of as like a badass sorcerer from my childhood. Seeing him on Magic card, there was something. And here's Rafiki, Shaman of the Savannah. There was something about seeing a good amount of iconic imagery from my childhood presented in like this different world, this different fun way that instantly was making my nostalgia bubbles uh hinge up. I don't know where I was going with nostalgia bubbles. That was kind of a weird one. But even pulling like cold foils of random commons and uncommons. But ooh, there's a legendary Yzma. Even pulling foils of commons or uncommons, because anyone who isn't familiar, the rarity slot. See, this is a cold foil hollow or cold foil rare. The what Pokemon's used to think of as like the hollow slot is a cold foil slot, and it can be any rarity in Lorcana. That also means like your legendary can come both in a cold foil and non-cold foil. See how she's kind of raised up on that art. Look at that Yzma. Gorgeous. Um, but that means all of these, even like really playable cards, you can get with much more frequency and get like a fair amount of value back out of your opening, even if you didn't get necessarily a card that you were facing or one for just part of your subset, some binder page or whatever it is that you're opening up packs for. So it's just a huge amount of variety in what it is I could be chasing, right? Which is always a good thing. Same with like I'm a big fan of animation, more partial to Warner Brothers than Disney. But I like I mentioned, I have memories with these properties. So there's something I can collect. Simultaneously, these all have like an art style of Disney, but they allow all their artists still to express themselves to a certain degree. If you looked at 5 different Elsa cards, you're going to see all of them feel as if they're part of a universe, while all of them have enough flair and expression that you can clearly see an artistry at play, which I enjoy. Again, that allows me to identify artists that I really like, just like over in Pokemon. Boom, now I'm collecting that artist as well. That's other binder pages I can be on the lookout for when I'm looking through listings. So things that would just motivate me to want to collect cards, even that aren't necessarily valuable, but are fun to look at. Even within their first couple of sets, when I'd come back to looking at Lorcana, they had connected arts already, where they had removed part of the border to let the first card connect to the middle card that had no border to connect to the last card. It's apparently something of a meme for people to not understand that they're looking at a connected art. Um, but they were very smart. They were intelligent about knowing, hey, there are different ways that we can have people hunt for things in these cards other than just being playable or just being incredibly rare, right? Because that's where casually collecting something comes in. On top of that, they added in new rarities in these last couple of sets. One just below what was the highest rarity, and one just above it. So again, just throwing in more variety of being able to hit different things through the packs. Elsa's Ice Palace for my rare there. So it speaks to again what I'm looking for at the end of the day, something that's fun to open up, something that's fun to play. My secondary concern then is having something that is at least fun to play because I'm not going to be playing this competitively in any sense. I like Pokemon. I'll probably be going to pre-release events to kind of support stores. So that's what 4 sets a year. Probably play a handful of league nights, a handful of matches against like friends and family. We're talking like maybe a dozen to 2 dozen matches through a year is what I'll be playing. So not anything where it's like that's the primary motivation here. Definitely just collecting. But I need something that when I play, I'm not going to be like, what? I'm just getting my ass handed to me, or there's just no actual thought process behind it. Lorcana very much was not that way. What is fun when I do play is finding the card combinations, right? Or the synergies, I believe they call them most often in tcgs, finding little ways, goofy ways sometimes that aren't even intended, to have these cards interact with one another to try to win the game, or just annoy your opponent sometimes. I had found out later on in life this is what are called rogue decks. So if you're coming to this show for like highly competitive ideas, you're in the wrong spot. I'm gonna be running some rogue decks up in this guy. Ooh, high slinger Donald Duck. This is two legendaries in a gift box. Look at this bad boy. I don't know if you can see him all raised. Oh, wait. I just gotta take a second to marvel at it a little bit. I really like that card a lot. Always like the idea of in a TCG that there could be like a hidden powerhouse. That was always a draw for TCGs to me. That something in this card pool could be thrown together that the meta wasn't currently accounting for. And suddenly you could be like the genius who cooked it up. So here are hits. Non-sleeved because I just roll like that. I raw dog this thing. There's our Donald Duck with that raised sheen, baby. And then he's my oh, that's a beautiful card. But yeah, Lorcana also had very unique play mechanics. Usually in just about any of these games, you need some sort of power, mana cost, energy, something that powers your attacks. In Lorcana, you have to choose certain cards are inkable. If you look at Yzma's number has that big thick circle. And if I pulled up like Mama Odie here as a thinner circle, it means I can't put Mama Odie into what's called my inkwell. I can't turn her into energy. But the other cards that have that circle, I can turn her into. There is no energy card in Lorcana. Brilliant mechanic because it forces you upon your opening hand to make this sacrifice, to do a cost benefit analysis of what you are most likely going to use early on and what you most likely wouldn't get use out of. Really brilliant mechanic. Add on to that the singing mechanic that I'm probably going into too much detail than you need to know. Fun. It was innovative. It was something that I hadn't done before. So boom, it was fun to open, fun to collect, and it's fun to play. Next, I needed to know though, is it going to be around for the long haul? So before I go and sink like a bunch of time and money into gaining knowledge of this card game, building up decks or filling out like these binders, if I'm going to endeavor on all that, I got to know that it's going to at least last the couple of years that I'm going to be interested in it. On average, a new hobby only preoccupies someone's time for about the first 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. And I'm losing my breath already. I'll address to that as I babble on and on more to you folks. Trying to be honest with myself and saying I don't need this to last forever necessarily. I'm not investing in Lorcana, right? Although I will even be speculating a bit. I'll touch on that. Maybe not in this video, but I'm just looking for a fun hobby. So between Disney and Ravensburger, do I believe that they can steward this TCG for at least another couple of years? Well, when I look at their actions, I see a company with a history in like board games instead of TCGs. So as they navigate all their problems, they are at least listening to the fan base's reaction as they go, right? They've gotten feedback about terrible packaging early on their booster boxes. They took that feedback and they shrink wrapped their damn boxes like the rest of the industry now. They took feedback on like an overbearing card. Bucky was banned fairly early on. I think that was like set what two was he Floodborn? Two or three? I wasn't around then. I don't remember. But they took feedback, player feedback of like how overbearing this card was, on how unfun it was to play against. And they said, well, then we really should take that out of legal play. So I've watched them. So I've watched them take the criticisms. Same with rarities. They were criticized for not having enough variance in the opening experience. So they added a couple more rarities to the sets. They just don't they seem committed to actually staying around rather than just making this a cash grab. Good enough for me. Even if they die in the 2 years that my interest dies as well, cool. I'm just looking for a damn hobby. Now, it does mean because it's going to be around for a bit, I am going to get into it on this video. So because it will be around for a little bit, I want to speculate a little bit. It does provide the opportunity with enough knowledge of any secondary market of a collectible, you can have a hobby help pay for a little part of itself. No, you're not going to get rich. You could start a business around TCGs, or you could just make the hobby pay for a little part of itself. We're going to, in this channel, explore part of that as well. I want to help kind of demystify what it is that helps TCGs gain so much value once they leave print. Um, but it's not something that I ever want to present as like investing. And I think there's a reason people want you to think it's investing is because you can't time an investing market the same way you can time a manufacturer printing product. And when a company says we're going to make more product, maybe just stay patient and wait for them to make more product. They want you to say, well, I can't really time the market so that you buy a box at 2 to 3 times MSRP and they have the money to go buy 3, 4 boxes to charge at 2, 3 times MS. It's unless you understand why they're trying to frame it that way in your mind, you're just going to be set up for disaster if you watch all those channels. But if you watch someone who isn't an asshole like me, you can figure out how to spot really good deals, how to make a little bit of extra Skrilla and not go broke just trying to add a new hobby into your life. Because again, this could be something in 2 years that you don't fucking care about. So if there are little ways that you can ensure you're getting your money's worth through the whole endeavor, there's nothing wrong with that. And I will help you in that process. There's just a gulf of difference between how Pokemon wants to treat their customers and how Lorcana wants to treat theirs. And right now, I'd much rather have the person who's trying to take me out on a really nice date because they need me, rather than the people who are like, "Yeah, those peons, they'll get whatever the scalpers at Costco and Sam's Club will give them after the brawl." I'm just not feeling that anymore. If it comes back to reality at some point, cool, I'm all on board. I'm hoping that's going to be in 2026. If not, in the meantime, I'm gonna find another hobby and another way that I can enjoy the experience of opening something, feeling the theme of a set, getting iconic characters. Do you know how much I love Emperor's New Groove? That was me and my sister's, like, jam growing up. I also think if we demystified it a bit, that the fans who collect Pokemon who don't understand necessarily the value of local game shops and local comic shops who also stock card games. Maybe if they knew long term the impact of shifting their spend from a big box store to a mom and pop game store, and what it would mean from because the Zays at Walmart of the world work at Walmart. They don't work at a passion like a hobby store that, scrape by the chin on or the hair on the chinny chin chin all the times where it isn't a hype market. Um, I don't know, I'm rambling there. But the long and short of it is, when I go through that rundown, that checklist, Lorcana's fun to open. It's fun to actually collect. It's, fun to play. It's gonna be around for a while, so it's gonna be fun to also play I can buy that at a good rate, and it'll probably go up a little bit later. Um without it being something that you're investing in. But yeah, yeah, if you're interested in all that, hit the subscribe and all that down low. Leave a comment. Again, if I dissed on your game that you love a whole lot, leave me a comment, let me know. Um, I don't know, my throat hurts. I love y'all. Bye.